We got Drew here. We got David. We got AK and AM in the back. We got all Minnesota stories plus a little bit of extra, but a lot of just Minnesota since we're all here, uh, here and at the precipice of the Civil War, maybe World War III. There's a lot going on in the last week, and it's been even a couple weeks now. So thanks for joining us. A couple stories we got. Of course, the anti-ice, ice protest, anti-ice. We got all this stuff. Invasion of the church. They came in, and Don Lemon was a part of that as well. So could be charges facing him. A lot of people are not happy about that. We got Jake Lang. He was attacked by an angry mob. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then the Latin Kings, they steal a rifle out of a vehicle, ice type, officer type vehicle, and doesn't look too good. That person's already has charges. And then Nick Sordor. So he's been filming a lot of this for the last couple weeks. He's been doing a lot of good stuff on the ground. He got his $1,000 camera stolen. So it's just been a wild type ride. And then no guest tonight, but we got some fun stories with all this craziness going on. A solar storm could bring on doomsday. So we just got a lot going on in our world, in our Minnesota world, and everything like that. So yeah, I'm Drew Outstanding. I'm a disabled veteran, now consultant, and adaptive sports athlete. So I want to go to my other co-host, David. Who are you? What do you do?
Thanks, Drew. David Webster here, ex-military as well. Just a legal immigrant, patriot. I love what's going on here in the cities with the immigration crackdown that's been happening. It's what I voted for, and if I can be one voice of reason in a sea of Karens and blue-haired liberal women yelling about how we should keep all the child predators and drug dealers in this country, then I'm here for that. So, and yeah, that's what I got.
AK, what's happening?
Man, yeah, man. It's good to be able to see you again, Drew. We missed you last week. We had a great fun time with Representative Walter Hudson. My name's AK Kamar. I'm the Republican National Committee man for the state of Minnesota. And to our little trio of podcasts, I try and add like the official Republican Party of activist perspective. I think that having a podcast that discusses news, popular culture, is very, very important. I think that's actually how we win electoral power, is that we have to be able to understand that politics is downstream from culture. And so we have to be on top of how things that are happening in culture actually can relate back to becoming politically active. I think that in Minnesota especially, we've been losing this battle. So I hope to try and bridge all of these things together, and we will go on now for the next couple of hours. We typically will try and have a guest. We're not going to have a guest this evening, but make sure that you hit the like button, hit the share button, and drop your comments, because we will go through your comments throughout the rest of the show.
Excellent. And then just going right back to AK, bring us in, give us an update of what's happening in the last 7 days related to the ice debacle here in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, you basically can't, as the saying goes, swing a dead cat without hitting a story nationally that brings in Minnesota. And that it's been like it's probably been what now, 3 weeks since the first Nick Shirley video dropped. Before that, arguably, there were still conversations about what was happening in Minnesota, but it really hit this fever pitch, and it's remained at a relatively high position where, like, basically every night there are protests going on in Minneapolis, going down to the Whipple building where they're currently holding people. And so we've had all of these different, clashes with ICE and law enforcement that have been happening almost on a daily basis. Well, yesterday, a group, and if you want to pull this up, Andrew, it's the first story that I have linked there, the NBC News article, but a group called the Racial Justice Network decided it would be a great idea to actually invade a church during the middle of the church service and intimidate the people attending that church. They decided it would be a great idea to scream at them and tell them that they were white supremacists and Nazi sympathizers. because allegedly one of the pastors also does work with ICE. And so this story has caught on fire, which it should, because there's a handful of things that are happening in this. So from the title of the article, you can see that the Department of Justice Civil Rights blasts Don Lemon for covering anti-ICE protests inside of church, vows charges against protesters. So here's the first thing. It is 100% illegal to actually enter a church and intimidate, threaten, or coerce the people that are in attendance. Like, we have freedom of religion in this country, right? We also have freedom of speech. But the Supreme Court has affirmed and upheld that the FACE Act is okay on its surface. And basically what it says is that you actually can't go into places of worship and protest. And specifically protest by, being threatening or coercive. And we're going to end up playing a video here as well. But I mean, it was pretty brutal. Children crying, these people are in there screaming and yelling obscenities in the middle of a church. And so I just kind of wanted to throw it around to you three gentlemen and just kind of get your take on, if you saw the videos, and then also, what's your kind of initial reaction? Do you think that this is something you haven't seen before? But yeah, I just want to throw it out there. I'm going to kick it back to you first, Drew, and get your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I've been following this story because from the time I've been noticing more people coming into Minnesota and doing their thing, regardless, whatever side you're on and want to cover things, investigative journalist, whatever. And then, yeah, I noticed Don Lemon, former CNN legacy media guy, is doing his own thing. He got let go from CNN, whatever it was, a year or 2 years previously. And then he's been doing this more man on the street at different places throughout the country since then. And then I see him in the snow in Minnesota. And so the first video that I saw him on, he's trying to interview somebody, and he's almost about to get jumped by the protesters, riders, and stuff like that. And then somebody else is like, he's on our side, and it's like, and then then the guy's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, and I didn't realize that we're on the, it got so ridiculous. And this was all on camera, and they kept everything and everything like that. And then of course, a day later, he's doing this church thing, and he's actually in the church talking to one of the pastors, one of the guys, and he's like, well, why aren't you going up and talking to these, the protesters? And he's like, we're here to do a service. This is what we're doing. You guys came in here and then started causing all this fuss. So yeah, it's just been a wild thing back and forth. And then I see the Don Lemon make his own video later, be like, hey, I was able to do this. I was just being a journalist, freedom of the press, and then it's same thing, it doesn't make sense when you're impeding on other people's right to religion. And then in this kind of form, he's like, I was just there to record. But when it comes to, if there was a bank robbery, if it's a felony with something, every person involved, from start to finish, I learned this in law enforcement classes, from the planning phase all the way to everything else. If you're a part of that, then you get charged with everything. And that could apply to more things. You can't just say, oh, I was just recording while this chaos was going on. But yeah, what do you think, David?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree with that. And I mean, I actually have some of the footage if AM wants to throw it up, but it's you can clearly see in the footage that he's not there as a passive reporter who's just observing and filming what's happening. He's actively getting in the face of the preacher and other people. He's literally standing in front of the group as they walk in. But yeah, you can go ahead and play that.
Don Lemon and his left-wing mob just stormed a Minnesota church to protest ICE. The mob was seen yelling at the people trying to worship, calling them fake believers, and forcing the church to stop the service,
what's down below is what he
causing
was
worshipers
wearing,
to flee the building with their children. The large group disrupted the Sunday service at City's Church in St. Paul, where David Easterwood serves as pastor. Easterwood is allegedly also the acting field office director for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in St. Paul, overseeing enforcement and removal operations across Minnesota and neighboring
cut it
states.
there, AM.
At one point,
Actually, no. Well, you can leave that frame right there. Yeah. So there he is, clearly not being a neutral, independent journalist. he's getting in people's faces. You know, he's got the finger in the face of this this Christian preacher, and it always seems to be the Christians, right? Like I didn't see them storm a mosque, I didn't see them storm a synagogue, and I want to put this out there. I don't want them to do that either. But I mean, it seems to always be Christians that get hit with this, and yeah, I don't think he was a passive participant in any of this. I think he was very much leading the charge.
And here's the thing, like you bring up a good point. If this happened to a mosque in the middle of a service, how do you think people would be reacting right now? I mean, don't get me wrong, like this story is receiving national attention from the legacy media, but they're actually framing it as though like the Department of Justice is overstepping their bounds. Like it's crazy the way that they frame it. The local legacy media, like I watch, basically all of our local ABC affiliate, CBS, NBC, Fox, and the way that they've been covering this protest is like this sympathetic view that, these anti-ICE people are just, they need to make an impression. And to that point, if you want to, Andrew, there's a second link I have linking to the actual FACE Act. And it's pretty straightforward. Like it's cut and dry. The irony here is that this law was actually written, like its main intention to stop pro-life Christians from obstructing the entrances to abortion centers. So that was like kind of the original impetus to the law. But if you look, right, it says specifically prohibited activities by force or threat or for threat of force or by physical obstruction, intentional injuries, intimidates or interferes with or attempts to injure, intimidate, interfere with any person because that person is or has been or in order to intimidate such a person of any class, person obtaining, providing reproductive services. However, there's a second part to this. By force or threat of force or by physical obstruction, intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. And then it specifically gives the penalties. In case of the first offense, fined in accordance with this title, imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. And then in case of second or subsequent offenses after prior conviction, not in prison more than 3 years or both. So, I mean, like you could literally go to prison for a year for doing what they did. Now, I understand that they're going to argue that they did not threaten, they did not use force, but clearly having a mob go to the church, stand in the middle of the aisles while one of the guys was like screaming in the faces of the attendees, I don't think that there's any way to construe that that wasn't intimidation of force or threat of force. So this is pretty cut and dry. So if you think about it, this from a federal level, I think has to be fully vetted. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Is it possible that, the Department of Justice would feel they don't have a strong enough case? Maybe, I don't know. Again, I'm not a lawyer. But at least for sure, Pam Bondi and more specifically Harmeet Dillon, who's in charge of Civil Rights Division, they have said that they're on this. So I'm just want to kind of curious, reading that description, first to you, David, like, what do you think, man? I mean, is it pretty cut and dry that this is a violation of the FACE Act? Do you think that maybe there's anything there that would not, be able to bring charges? And do you think, I should say lastly, do you think charges will be brought?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way that law is laid out, it absolutely applies to the situation, and they kind of shot themselves in the foot with this. Now, as to do I think charges are going to be brought? I think, interestingly enough, I know Cardi B came out and said not Cardi B, Nicki Minaj came out and said she wanted to see some charges. I like that. She's staying based, and I'm a fan. I was actually listening to some of her music earlier today. Don't judge me.
Sustained bass. I like that.
Sustained bass. And it seems like there's been kind of the rumor mill running. There's things being posted on social media about it. Sounds like that there's a pretty good chance that some charges are going to be filed even against Don himself, Don Lemon himself. So that I hope that that's what happens. We need examples to start being made, and not just of the extremes, but also of the other things that are still crimes. like this. Like this might not be as extreme as attacking somebody speaking at an event, or breaking the windows of an ICE vehicle, or but it's still a crime, and there still needs to be some repercussions so that we can kind of get this stuff to die down, and actually get a certain amount of these people to just go back home and go back to their lives.
What about you, Drew?
Yeah, and this law, it was made, like you said, for that abortion type thing, and I guess it couldn't have got passed with just that. So they're like, no, we'll add in religious part of it as well. And then I guess people didn't think that would come back to haunt them in this kind of type of situation. So yeah, use it to the full extent. Get charged. Okay, I really hope they'll get charged. Okay, I think that they'll get charges. Do I think that they're going to be legit like the charges are going to stand and it's going to be more than a slap on the wrist? No, I would like it to be, or is it just going to be Don Lemon cashing a check or community service or something like that, and probably in 2 years from now or whatever the ridiculous thing is. So I'm not optimistic that it will change anything. I hope it will. I hope they'll do complete charges. With all this stuff going on in Minnesota, we're just on this really fine line between, okay, are you guys gonna do anything? And then otherwise, this will keep going on in Minnesota for weeks, and longer. We're in a cold, it's like -2, a high of -2, or feels like, or whatever, today, and people are still protesting. It's been weeks. And so imagine what the summer would be. We still got 3 more years of the current administration. I can't believe it. But on the other hand, if they do Insurrection Act or whatever like this, then other parts of the country are probably going to pop off. So I don't know. I'm sick of it. Like, it's dividing friends and families and, all this stuff. So I hope charges will get placed and they will stick enough to kind of change something.
Yeah, so I just also want to kind of add on 2 other pieces, again, just to be able to give people the full, complete picture of what exactly occurred. So yes, there is clearly, in my opinion, again, I'm not a lawyer, in my estimation, this is a clear violation of the FACE Act. Well, it turns out there is also a Minnesota state statute that was, my interpretation, was violated. So that means that St. Paul Police or the Minnesota State Patrol should also be able to make arrests and charges. And Andrew, if you want to pull up, it's the first X account link. I just made a post on X, and just basically laying out that St. Paul has statutory authority, and they 100% could arrest any of the people that were involved. Again, if they would have arrived on scene, they could have arrested them, or they can go right now and try and find them and arrest these individuals. And if they've left the city of St. Paul and let's say Minneapolis won't cooperate or other police departments won't, you also have the Minnesota State Patrol. And so ultimately, again, if you look at what the law in the state statute says, sounds pretty clear that it was violated. So the question is, specifically to Governor Walz, everyone should be asking, because Governor Walz came out earlier today and he condemned that act. So good for him, whatever. I don't want just a condemnation. I want arrests. And Kali Her, who is the new mayor of St. Paul, again, she can direct the St. Paul police to go and make arrests. And so ultimately, I think that both you and David are correct, Drew, that we need to see accountability. That's actually how you stop this stuff from happening. And one last thing, just to kind of throw out there, you'd be mistaken if you think that because Governor Walz basically condemned the act, that the Democrats are all on the same page. Drew, I should say, AM, if you want to pull up the other X post that I have, we have the usual suspects that are basically saying, this is a good thing. So Representative Lee Finke, who is a biological male who thinks that they are a woman, so this is a trans-identified DFL state rep representing St. Paul area, came out and said, no, we need to do more of this. Until ICE leaves, we have to do more of this. So again, this is a current
more of what
city
specifically? The church
going into churches and violating the FACE Act and Statute 609.28. So this elected state representative is saying, no, we need to do more of it. And so this is the current state of things in Minnesota. So you know what? Good. If you're going to advocate for breaking the law and you really want to be a justice freedom fighter in your own brain, to jail like the Justice Freedom Fighters did back in the day. Now, the difference to me, very, very clearly, is that in this case, it's violation of both federal and state. Okay. And it's not like brand new laws. Like back in the civil rights era, with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, people say, well, you know what? People stood up against bad laws back then, right? You know, anti-segregation, or I should say segregation laws and things like that. And I can hear your argument, okay? I can hear your argument. But that's not at all what we're talking about here. We're talking about federal law that has been on the books that was passed saying that if you are in the country legally, that this is what you do. And if you don't do that, you are illegal and you are subject to deportation. Versus the civil rights era was talking about, okay, in this state, they have these segregation laws and they're saying you can't do this. But you know the crazy part is I agree with nonviolent civil disobedience. I do. But it also means that you have to be locked up. But in this case specifically, the church that they went to isn't some, ICE processing center. It's literally a church. So their intent was to cause terror, to cripple the community, to try and force, in my opinion, people to be like, oh, well, we better comply. Otherwise, we're going to have each of our churches interrupted. They're not doing what the civil rights folks did at all in this estimation. But what do you two think? If you want to tie this into the civil rights era.
And then it's not like planned. I'm not saying everything has to be planned, but usually protest, you put in a petition, stuff like that. I'm not saying it has to be every time, but there's more organization, the MLK going up to the DC, the march, all these different things throughout all history. Right now, it seems like chaos. Like we're going to do whatever. Hey, somebody's going to get a bright idea. We're going to go into the church. And then you have that guy that was running around screaming. He was like chasing people. I don't know if we have that video, but he was like chasing people. He had his phone, pointed both to him. So his own face was on the video. And then he was also filming the people he was basically accosting, it looked like to me. And it was just wild. Like there's nothing organized or purposeful for this. I'm trying to see the perspective of the other people, but all I hear is like, oh, protecting our neighbors, standing by our neighbors and all this stuff. And I want it to make sense, but none of this makes sense to me at all.
What about you, David?
If you're back, you might be muted.
Hey, it's 2026, boomer.
Can you guys hear me? There we go.
Technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun time. I agree. I think the pushback I have is that, like you guys were saying, this doesn't seem organized. It just seems like people high on emotions when, hey, let's go storm this building, and didn't really think through what the consequences of that would be, which is kind of a lot of what we've been seeing, right? When it comes to all the way back to like last week, we talked about the shooting, right? That was everything that happened there was all emotions based. Like, hey, like her partner was telling her, hey, drive, not thinking about the consequences. Like there's so much that shows that things aren't being planned out, and people aren't following like the correct way to like protest something where you actually maybe ultimately get your goal, but it also doesn't cost you human lives. And so that's kind of, it seems to fall into that category where you have these ongoing incidents where it's just everybody's high in emotions, mob mentality, and you just get chaos like this.
One of the
and I'm just wondering about.
Go ahead, Drew.
Real quick. I'm just wondering about like the profit motive in all this stuff too. Kathleen in the chat brought something up like that, saying they have to be getting paid to protest, to be out in the cold, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, many different ways. You can see it many different ways that For one, a lot of the fraud stuff, be like, okay, people are getting paid in other ways. Now they have time to go kind of do this. The other thing is, okay, now it's a federal holiday today. Now more people are able to go do that. They're putting out on Friday to don't go to work, don't go to school, and don't spend money. So then what are people gonna do? Go protest. They're like, okay, come join our army of this. And yeah, it's just getting a little bit wild, AK.
Yeah, so the thing that's, I think, kind of curious to wrap this up, especially into that point about being paid. I do think that sometimes we on the right are too quick to jump to the conclusion that all of these protesters are paid. Like, understand that there are people that are dyed in the wool, crazy, deranged, from my perspective, that will go out there in below zero weather because they think they're freedom fighters, Like that's how delusional some of these folks are. They do it for free. Now, yes, there definitely is a history of these being organized, and people finding, like Alpha News was reporting. You'll find something that will be out there on whatever these different pages are where people post. I'm having a boomer moment. I can't think of the page that people post for like work wanted or whatever. But yeah, so you'll see pages like that where they're paying protesters,
Craigslist?
whatever, $20, $30.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you talking about
There we
Craigslist?
go. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
forgot
paying
that.
for all kinds of stuff. They're paying child actors even to show up at daycares. It's
Right, that's what I'm saying. So like I'm saying
Yeah.
that is true too, but like don't be disillusioned to thinking that there aren't people that live in our society that actually believe this stuff with their whole heart. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen any of this at the churches that you're involved in, or even have like anecdotal stories. But a buddy of mine sent me an email that came from his church that he loves. Okay, it's a church that him and his family found. They love the church, and guess what they're doing? They're putting together kits for families and neighbors that are too afraid to leave their house. I'm sorry, but here's the deal. If you are afraid to leave your house, it's probably because you are an illegal alien. So if the church is going to provide material to people who are actively committing crimes, that to me is a step too far. I'm all for helping people that might have come here on refugee status, or again, let's say that you are convicted of a crime and the church wants to be able to still do the work of Jesus Christ the way that he taught us to help take care of our fellow person. But to go after someone who's actively engaged in a crime, that's like saying the church is going to help hide wanted drug felons that have warrants, and they know that this person is hiding from law enforcement. They say, no, we're going to come and hide you. And it's because these people think that they're, again, like back in Nazi Germany, and they're hiding Nazis, Jewish people from the Nazis from going to concentration camps. Like they have disillusioned themselves, or they're back in the 60s and they're freedom riders, and they're marching for the civil rights of illegal aliens because they're being beat every day or something crazy. It's like, it's literally not that, but people believe it. So I just, to that point of the comment, there are people that are just that mentally unwell, or they've been fooled, or whatever the reason is, that really think that they are on the right side of history, which I think that's such a stupid term, but it's kind of sad when it's like, it's very cut and dry. These people are not being beaten. They're not being put in concentration camps or labor camps. The goal is to send them home. The problem arises, some of their home countries refuse to take them back. So then what do we do? Do we allow them to continue to stay in the United States because the country won't take them back? Or do we encourage them to self-deport? And so in that case, previous administrations, they would let the illegal aliens back into the country, and then they would disappear. So now we're at a point where if we scoop you up and we have a lawful deportation order, you got to go home. And if your home country won't take you, we're trying to negotiate other countries to take you, but you can't stay here. So my advice to anyone that watches this video, if you're an illegal alien, go home. If you need money to go home, ask the church, and maybe the church will give you money to go home.
Well, isn't there a
Also,
self-deport? I've been hearing about a self-deport incentive, right?
Yes. So if you download the CBP Home app and you report your information and you don't have like outstanding criminal warrants and stuff like that, you can receive $1,000 to go home. And I believe they increased the bonus. I don't know if it's still increased right now, but they had increased it to either 2,000 or 3,000. So yeah, man.
last I heard it was 3,000. Yeah.
Yeah, man. We really want you to go home. So go home. I just think that, again, in its proper context, there are people that are just really that mentally unwell that they think that they're freedom fighters, dude. They're like, they read Anne Frank's diary and they're like, I'm hiding the Jew in my attic. It's like, dude, you're literally not. Like, this is crazy that you think that this is what is happening in this country. But
Well,
yeah,
these are like violent and dangerous criminals. Like, there's I don't know
in
if you
some
guys saw
cases,
the
yeah,
video
for sure, dude.
that was making the rounds on like Instagram and TikTok of the ICE agent. Like the protesters are filming him, and the guy's leading out he's got his window open, which is insane to me. I wouldn't open my window if you have that many people that are doing all the stuff that's happening. But the guy's like, we're literally on our way to apprehend a predator, like a child predator. What's wrong with you guys? And one of the arguments I've been hearing a lot is like, oh, they're separating families. You got the kids and the parents, and they're not together. And I'm like, well, first of all, they probably have some sort of like social work aspect where they're working with the kids. And the other thing they're doing that nobody wants to talk about, because we talked about how they've, Tom Holman had come out and said that they had rescued like over, was it like over 80,000 kids, or I think it was maybe even 180,000 kids. It's just it was an obnoxiously high number that shouldn't exist, and that's a tragedy. But what's happening is you have people who get paid to come across the border, and this person's posing as dad, this person's posing as mom, and they maybe have two or three kids, and all those kids are trafficked children. They're just waiting on a buyer, and so they live in your neighborhood, and you just think they're a family, and then one day, the son maybe isn't playing out in the yard anymore because a buyer, he got sent to whoever bought him, and that that's like what they're verifying is if they're apprehending these people, it's like, hey, are these really your parents? And then obviously if it's a family unit, you send them back home as a family, and if they're not, then we're rescuing that kid from a fate worse than death. And these people that are interfering with all of that, and their argument is like we're separating families, you're not looking at the full context, and you don't want to hear what's actually happening. And that's
Yeah,
probably one of
and
the things that frustrates me the most, as somebody who's from South America, is seeing all of that.
yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on that last point. The other aspect is, okay, if you are an illegal alien and you had a child here and you have to go back, do we leave the child here, or does the American citizen child come with you? And I think that that's the other part, is like you would see some of these sensational stories, but luckily DHS and I think her name is Trisha McLaughlin, who's one of the spokespeople for DHS or ICE. Like, she has shut down so many of these stories that are going viral, saying like, oh, this American citizen was, deported. And it's like, there were 5 and they were with their illegal alien mother. Do you want the 5-year-old to go into a foster care system in the United States? No, they should go with their parent. Listen,
That's what it has to be. Like, what would you rather do? What would you have me do? Do you want them to be separated? Do you want them to go together? You got to have that full conversation. You're right, AK. You don't get that from these stories. So we need a positive, like a, intentional person, like you said, these people and these agents be like, okay, here's what you're talking about. That's not the case. Here's what it is. Now what?
no, I agree with you. We should move on to the next topic. Who wants to take the next topic?
Well, let me try to share, since we're talking about like different administrations and Tom Homan and stuff like that, let me try to share this real quick. Let me know if there's not sound or anything, because CNN in previous years under the Obama administration were, ICE isn't a brand new thing going into different cities and states like Minnesota. It's not this is not the first time it's ever happened. So I'm going to play this. Let me know if you can't hear it.
The cloak of darkness in Chicago.
Attack 1, guys.
An immigration and customs enforcement team gears up for another long day, pursuing undocumented immigrants who have been convicted of crimes in the U.S. ICE agents mistakenly arrest.
So I'll just pause it right there. So 2016, and then this is a whole thing where it's like, this has been going on. It goes on throughout the country. This is not just a brand new thing in Minnesota, because I heard some reporters say, oh, why isn't this being taken care of in California and Texas and New Mexico and Arizona? Because everyone's already here. They're in all of, Martha's Vineyard, and a couple years ago, all this kind of stuff. So it's like, it's been going on. This isn't a brand new thing. The only new thing is everyone's got a phone that they can act like they're no longer a keyboard warrior. Now they're a live stream, warrior that they're going to go off and, cosplay in a dangerous environment. Like I've been to war type scenarios. David has been, done this thing, and AK's had experience, all over the place. Like, you don't want to be a part of this. You try to avoid it. That's what they say, is like, you want to win a fight is a fight that you don't, participate in, or the one that you get away. It's the one that you win. And it's really getting wild. I'll play a little bit more of this.
That's the target's brother.
In the process of talking to him in the vehicle, he then said, oh, no, I'm actually so-and-so. Who you're looking for is over here, this other address. He led us to that address, and we were able to actually arrest the individual.
Look at that. The legal immigrant helped ICE apprehend the illegal immigrant, even though they were family. And not to be harsh, that's how it should be.
And that's the thing.
That's what
Like,
it should
it's
be.
never going to go perfectly all the time. But if you don't have people that are hindering the operation, like David said, These people are going after child predators. They're criminals. It's like, we just need to do this job. And that's what, instead of Tim Walz and Jacob Frey saying that, like, oh, go do your thing. This is fine. The federal government is horrible. What, all this stuff, paraphrasing. But it's just like, they could use their law enforcement jurisdictions to keep back and keep safe the protesters, so they can do it in a safe kind of way, constitution, safe, peaceful protest, while the operations go on, and you're actually getting these criminals. But instead, it causes just chaos. And then, mistakes are probably going to happen. Correct those mistakes quick, because, you're dealing with different languages and cultures and, whatever they can kind of go into. I'm sure they're going into it with a lot of plans. And the more that we have technology, AI, tracking software, all this kind of stuff, it's going to get easier and easier, but it's going to cause more conflict too.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and
I think
the other thing
Go
that
ahead,
comes
David.
with that is legacy media, right? You have them conflating the difference between someone being detained and someone being arrested. Like, if I'm, as an example, detained and they want to verify my status as a legal immigrant to this country as a citizen, right? That doesn't mean I was arrested. Yeah, I may be detained in a couple of hours. Worst case scenario, let's say all my paperwork's messed up. It's not. Putting that out there for the world. My stuff's in order. But let's say, they're taking a little longer to verify it. Maybe I lose a day. That's not the same as being arrested. That's, you've been detained. They're verifying your status as an immigrant, as a citizen or a refugee or whatever your status is, and that your paperwork is current. And then, if it is, you're going back on your way. But the legacy media will just say, oh, well, all these American citizens are getting arrested wrongfully and sent home. And it's like, that's not the case.
AK, do you want to wrap up that segment?
Yeah, I just, just on this topic, right, of these perceptions that people have, there have been two stories that have been getting a lot of traction by the left, and even people on the right are kind of falling for it. And the one story is that there's a young woman named Nasra Ahmed, American-born, Somali heritage, both are from Somalia. And apparently the story goes that she was minding her business on her way to the pharmacy. ICE agents grabbed her and said, prove that you're an American. And they threw her in ICE detention, and she was in Sherburne County after processing. And then they released her without charging her. And so people are sharing that story. Well, it turns out, if you watch the video, it looks like she clearly spits on the ICE agent. And so even if you're an American citizen, if you assault a federal officer, they can detain you and wait until another agency charges you. And sometimes they'll say, you know what? This has been their punishment. We put them in detention for 2 days and we're going to release them without charges, but it was a clear violation. So that's one instance. The other instance is that yesterday, a grandpa, that's what they're calling him, so maybe he's like a 50-year-old Hmong dude, American citizen, was, again, detained by ICE, and they basically let him go within an hour. Turns out the reason he was detained is because they were executing a search warrant looking for 2 convicted child sex offenders, and they matched the description, and they had surveillance that one of the 2 child sex offenders had been in that house. So my whole point is, when all these stories are going out, before you start automatically demonizing ICE and falling for that narrative that the left is setting, like, just take a step back and wait till more information comes out, because I just genuinely think that ICE is doing things so above board. They are taking extra due process and care to their actual process. And yes, like, they're not violating people's rights. Due process just means the process that you are due based off of a whole host of factors. American citizens are due a certain process. Permanent residents are due a certain process. Temporary illegal immigrants are due a certain process, and illegal aliens that have never had contact with anyone are due a certain process. So
That's a good point. It's all different due process. There's not one due process for anybody inside of the U.S. There's different ones for citizens, for whatever the case is, and that's got to be figured out. Everyone acts like they're a lawyer, they're a federal agent. It's not the case. Stay in your lane, people. Stay in your lane. Do your thing. But yeah, let's give David a chance to talk about the Latin Kings and stealing a rifle out of a vehicle.
yeah, tell us about your history of the Latin Kings essay.
No history of Latin Kings. Real quick before I jump into that, it looks like Forbes and some other places are reporting that President Trump 2 hours ago put something on Truth Social about Mr. Don Lemon, and encouraging them to find a way to charge him using the FACE Act, or yeah, what we were talking about
Okay.
earlier.
Yeah, AK, if you want to pull that
I had
up,
a
or while
I had a
David
boomer
talks about
moment
his
like
thing.
AK and forgot what I was talking about. But so while we're doing that, to this other clip that if AM could pull it up here. So we have Governor Walz come out and tell everybody, hey, protest, get in people's faces, film it, be a hero on the internet, whatever. And you should not do, this should be a lesson, and you should not do that if you have very distinguishable, noticeable, identifiable features like a face tattoo or a throat tattoo, you know. And this guy, there's no actual, it's just the image here, so that's fine. I had the video of him, but it was kind of blurry, of him actually breaking into the vehicle. So this guy broke into an ICE vehicle, and the officers, because of the crowd and the riot that was happening at the time, actually had to abandon the vehicle. And I believe what I had read was that they had actually reached out to Minneapolis PD, and they basically weren't going to help them out with the crowd getting out of hand. So this guy, on film, breaks into the vehicle. They get some documents. There was a lady that was doxing agent information. I think she's getting charged. And then because of this this beautiful art that this man has on his face, they found him within like a day, I think, is what I had read. And yeah, 33-year-old Raul Gutierrez. I've been in America too long. I'm fully assimilated, ladies and gentlemen.
Raul Gutierrez.
Yeah, whatever that is. And and obviously there's a lot of AI generated images and stuff. So the other thing that AM can pull up for us is this actually from the department, from the department's website, the DOJ, I believe, just kind of reporting on that. AM, if you can post that for us real quick. And so this guy
is
is
an AI generated image.
No. I'm saying that if people say that was an AI, like we actually have a verified report from the DOJ here, and I won't read the whole thing, but it just says Minneapolis. This was posted as of the 16th. Just prior convicted felon was charged with criminal complaint today after being a felon in possession of a firearm and theft of government property after breaking into an FBI vehicle and stealing a rifle, announced United States Attorney Daniel N. Rosen. And looks like there were some special agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So, I mean, this guy broke a couple of different laws because it's a federal officer's weapon, broke into a vehicle, damaged government property, stole government property, and then violated whatever the tobacco, alcohol, and firearms people are, going to be involved in charging him with as well. So I'm guessing there's
Yeah,
going to be
it's
multiple
no
charges
joke.
coming down.
Stealing weapons, stealing night vision goggles, any kind of that equipment from either military. For one, if you're military and you lose it, like you're in a world of hurt. David probably knows this too. But yeah, if you're taking weapons and any kind of that stuff from federal agencies or local law enforcement, you cross that line. So it's like you can't just say like, oh, we're all jumping in the back of the vehicle and taking out stuff. Everyone was doing it. Nope, they're gonna get you.
We actually had a guy when I was deployed lose his M4 overseas outside of the wire on patrol somewhere. Like he left it on the front of a vehicle, and then we drove away, and it was gone. Not good, not a good time. His life was miserable, and I saw it, and it reinforced, like, make sure your shoulder straps are good, make sure
you have to.
you've got
It's a
that thing
training
slinged.
thing. Yep, because you're not
absolutely.
getting sleep. You're doing 16, 18-hour days. You're forgetting stuff. People have left them in porta potties and that, and there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. You got to keep all that stuff on you, and let alone let somebody kind of take it from you as well. But yeah, well, in this case, they broke open the lock, they broke open the vehicle, all this stuff. And when you're crossing that many lines to get something like a rifle, that the federal law enforcement, they're like, nope, we know we're gonna get you. And of course they did very quickly, from what I heard.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
this
thing
guy's
that's so
the winner of
fascinating
the
to me-
F Around and Find Out award. What are
Yeah.
your
So
thoughts
what's
on it,
what's
AK?
so funny to me, dude, is like we're in 2026, and you literally see all these people with their cameras out. Unless your face is fully covered, like you are a moron to like commit like a felony like that. Like that's just it's funny. But listen, no one ever accused gangbangers of being intelligent people. I mean, I'm not saying they're all like just very, very stupid, but I mean, they clearly aren't making the best choices in their life when they put a giant tattoo on their face. And this isn't against everyone that has face tattoos. I mean, it is 2026 and plenty of smart people I know have face tattoos, but in general, I mean, come on. It's crazy to me. And the other part about that, right, is that this was part of this kind of escalating night after night where you had protesters turning into riots like every single night, throwing fireworks and ice chunks literally at federal agents, even at some of the state troopers that showed up, and even Minneapolis cops, because that specific night and that specific scene was when the Venezuelan illegal alien got shot in the leg. And it also turned out that the other two people that were assaulting that ICE agent were also Venezuelan illegal aliens. So, oh, wow, they all three were living together and they decided to try and help each other to try and get their homies away. But yeah, man, it's how can you be so dumb when everyone's got a phone out to just break federal laws right in front of everyone? It's just
At
funny
this
to me.
point, you're just making ICE's job easier for them because they're like, oh, we know where this person is. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with tattoos. I don't know if we haven't had those kind of conversations. I don't know if you guys have some, but I got a couple while I was in the military. I got a couple after the military. And I know, like, here in Minnesota, to go get a tattoo, like, you got to bring your driver's license. They scan your driver's license and they match it with whatever design that you selected, or you maybe you
Really?
have the artist work with you. Yeah, so like my driver's license with my tattoo artist, when she did my tattoos, it's on record with me. So if I go rob a bank and I'm wearing a t-shirt and you can see my forearm tattoos, and somebody tells the cop, "Hey, this is what it looks like," they can go into, like, there's, like, I'm assuming some sort of database for tattoos, and they can be like, "This is what this person," it narrows it down. Maybe there's 10 people that have this kind of military design tattoo or whatever on the forearm. Like, it's I don't know how you think you're going to get away with something when you have any sort of those identifying markers on your body.
Well,
Okay,
David,
yeah.
it just means that you've never heard of jailhouse tats. If you want to, maybe on one future episode, I can show you how to make a jailhouse tattoo gun using a motorized toothbrush. We did it when we were literally in high school.
Is this a
And-
back alley tattoo? Is this what we're saying?
Yeah.
gonna lead the
No.
back.
Hey, you know what? We get enough subscribers. Maybe we'll do a live tattoo on air. And we'll just, whichever
that's
one
what
of you
sucks.
draws
And-
with the steadier
And I
hand.
go to the whole privacy thing now. So now our ID. Okay, so a couple things. So now our ID is connected to our tattoos at a private tattoo shop or whatever. This is just, and that's when it gets
Well, and I
wild
don't know
to
if
me
it's a-
that like,
Yeah, I don't know if
Well,
it's a database
whatever
or
it
if,
is,
like,
I'm
they're
sure it will
required to
be.
have it at the shop. But yeah,
well, yeah, there's probably some law or some federal thing, and that's what I don't like. I don't like the federal government, local government has to be inside of all of our decisions and tracked every single picture, identifying mark, and all this stuff. And who was it? A news guy was saying, "Oh, are we going to?" Oh, it was Joe Rogan, because he was kind of playing both sides of the fence when he was talking to, I think it was Rand Paul in this last week. He's like, yeah, it's getting kind of crazy over here, but also we don't want the Gestapo going and asking for our papers. We get asked for ID. I get asked for my ID everywhere I go. You try to return something at Target, and they want your photo ID to see that you're not a serial returner or whatever it is. I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to return a Christmas present that I have 3 of or whatever.
You
But
try to get
anyway,
some
but
cold
yeah,
medicine. Yeah.
yeah, cold medicine, anything, any entertainment that's over a mature rating or whatever like that. And it's just, we show our ID for everything, for getting pulled over. Like, yeah, it's not papers, but every citizen has to show something all the time, constantly. So that's the world we live in. That's what it is now. We have to be identified in some. I don't like it. I would rather not have it that way, but our laws are made for the average person. And George Carlin said, if you think about how stupid the average person is, half of them are even more stupid than that.
Well, and I think specifically with this guy, like, he had priors, so he's been arrested before. And I mean, if they process you in prison, I'm pretty sure they take like a some sort of drawing or a photo maybe of your tattoos as they're processing you in, like when you have the picture with the number or whatever. So even if he had gotten that before, maybe there was any sort of rules for licensed tattoo shops. But I mean, there are workarounds. I mean, you could do what AK recommended and make yourself a prison tattoo gun. I don't recommend that. But you could also, you can get on Amazon and order a tattoo gun, and there are people that'll just do tattoo parties at their house, which I think is insane. I want to know that you got steady hands before I let you draw something permanent on my body. That's just me. But yeah, I mean, I'm guessing there are workarounds, but then yeah, once you've been arrested and they've got you documented and they've got you fingerprinted and all that, they probably have images of your tattoos in case you commit future crimes.
Well, and there's other things. You apply for a permit to purchase or a conceal and carry. I know for sure conceal and carry permit, at least in Minnesota, it's different for every jurisdiction. But you have to list all your tattoos and describe them and stuff like that. And it's like, is this necessary? But you have to do it. It sucks in order to get your constitutional right to bear arms. It really shouldn't be that way, in my opinion. But you got to go by what the rules are. It's unfortunate. I'd rather not have it that way, but bad apples are going to ruin it. David, if you're good with that one, I can roll into some more theft related to
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
stuff.
I guess the only big moral of that story is that, I mean, live your life. If you feel like getting a face tattoo expresses your personality, go for it. We're not going to judge you. We accept everybody, but maybe don't break into ICE vehicles. Don't commit crimes where there's body cameras and dash cameras and cell phone footage everywhere. Just a food for thought.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got the Daily Caller here. Nick Sortor dragged down Minneapolis street after Somalis allegedly steal his camera. So this was all recorded, or at least after the stealing. And the guy takes it, gets in his car or whatever, or gets passed to him, and Nick is hanging on to this car as it's driving away. And they're driving through like gas station driveways and stuff like that. And it's like, what just happened? And yeah, so a little backstory. Nick is the guy who's been up in Minneapolis doing this stuff for a couple of weeks now. He was the one that exposed that hotels were preventing ICE members or any federal law enforcement from staying there at a Hilton connected hotel. And Hilton says, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to get involved. And then the individual hotel kept doing it. And so now, and then Hilton said, okay, we're done with their licensing out to you. And they actually removed the whole sign saying, instead of it being brought to you by Hilton, they had to get a new one. But yeah, so this is Nick Sortor running with the car right here. So it says, independent journalist Nick Sortor's $1,000 camera was abruptly stolen Sunday as he was reporting on the riots by protesters opposed to ICE operations in Minneapolis, according to the video taken by another independent journalist. So yeah, it's just getting wild. What do you guys think about this related to independent journalists and, of course, the mobs of different things? What do you think, AK?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you get to a point where you can't go into certain parts of a community in a United States city, I think that you have a complete breakdown of your system's law enforcement. The fact that this is happening repeatedly over and over again by simply living in an area, you get to dictate that no one can come into your streets is crazy. I mean, this used to be this way back in the day. If you guys have read any type of historical analysis of gang culture going back even to like mob days, it's because there weren't enough law enforcement. And so in order to keep peace in a neighborhood, you would have different gangs that would fight over territory. And, the downside of that is they can decide to extort you and make you pay taxes to them to keep you safe. But we are not supposed to have that in the United States. There's not supposed to be no-go zones. And it's turning out that that's being made abundantly clear. Now, do I think it's because there's not enough law enforcement? Maybe. I mean, Minneapolis Police Department is down huge numbers, and more reports are coming out that it's getting even crazier. As many as 100, police officers have put in for paid family medical leave and some other things like that. But the truth is, I think some of it is that they look the other way. They're like, this is up to you. We'll let the street take care of this. Maybe you shouldn't be in this area. And I think that is a sad commentary. But there is a funny wrinkle to this. So apparently because of so much internet sleuthing. Like, we know who the lady is allegedly who jacked the camera, and she might be running an autism center. Allegedly, I guess there's going to be some more information that comes out hopefully in the next 24
Can't
hours.
imagine what her motivation was to steal that camera.
Yeah, I mean, it's just probably so she wasn't filmed or something. Like, who knows? I mean, the truth is that with Nick's order, he could have been killed. When she took off, she drove down a sidewalk, and only because it was icy and snowy, he was able to glide seamlessly along while his hand was stuck in the door handle. But listen, man, he could have tripped and been seriously injured, if not killed. And it's like, that's not okay, man. So that's my whole perspective on it, is like, it just shows that, especially in Minneapolis, law and order doesn't even exist. It's crazy.
No, it doesn't, because they're going to make exceptions to all of it. And as far as like not having enough law enforcement, it's more of, in my opinion, with my military background and my law enforcement degree, it depends on their rules of engagement and what they're told to do on each level, whether they're squad leader, their partners, their and each level up to that to whatever the commander is saying, and then they go off what the political jurisdiction that they fall under, whether it be a mayor, the county, or the governor. And so it's like they could want to do a certain way, and depends on what just subjectivity they have as well. So we're in a really difficult spot. I just keep hearing about, like, and then Walz is, I don't know where it is right now. I know they have National Guard ready to be activated. I don't know what level or how many. But then also Trump is sending in federal active duty service members as well. So they're on standby as well. So I'm just
It's
hearing
actually
this
my
and I'm
old
like,
unit.
is it? Yeah, Alaska.
Yeah,
They
because
they're used to cold weather.
and then it got reassigned somewhere else, and yeah, so it's actually my old unit insignias.
Yeah, so I don't see the off ramp happening right now. All that we're doing is leveling up with more different jurisdictions that are going to come here, all with different priorities, and then depending on what their leadership is telling them, and it's just wild. So yeah, these whatever enforcement and jurisdiction, they have to know what they're doing and what their mission is. It just can't be like all these different enforcement, and it's like, all right, guys, you guys figure it out, and it's just not going to go over very well. What do you think, David?
Yeah, absolutely. So to what I was talking about real quick, I'm just looking at this message I got from one of my Army friends. So we were 321 up in Alaska, and they decommissioned that unit, or they deactivated the unit, and then later it got reactivated as the 11th Airborne, and that's who's on standby right now. So it's my old unit. Nobody from that unit is still in it. Obviously, we're all old and our knees don't work. But no, to your point, what you were talking about with this, like, even I have a lot of respect for Nick Sorter and what he's doing on the ground, because I think even prior to this, what you were talking about, like the Minneapolis police and what their rules of engagement are, they've been told, it seems, not to help, not to intervene, because I believe a couple of days even prior to this incident, there's footage of him like on the phone with the Minneapolis PD, because they're surrounded by a mob, like his security or whatever group he was with, they're being completely overwhelmed, and they're trying to get out of the situation and get the police to help them, and he's on the phone with them, and they basically just say, well, we're not coming, and they hang up on him. And so yeah, it absolutely, what you were talking about, Drew, like there's like there's, even if they maybe want to help, they're, some of them, they're being told, potentially, right, we can't prove it, obviously, we don't know what's going on in those inner briefings, but it seems like they're being told to not assist and not help citizens.
The funny thing I did hear was ICE, or federal law enforcement, is saying, hey, local law enforcement, if you want to come and join us, let us know. We got spots. So if you're in a bad spot with your local, let us know. I thought that was pretty funny too.
I heard there was like 70 something resignations or something, and they're all from Minnesota, like statewide, and they're joining ICE, it sounds like.
Or taking, like you said, taking FMLA, taking sick days. We heard of the blue flu a couple years ago, where it's just like, no, this is getting too much. Like, I'm going to take some time off. So sorry. Like, this is not going well. So I don't know. People are going to end up doing what's best for their own selves, their own family. Like, why go into something like that? I wouldn't. Like, I'm avoiding Minneapolis, St. Paul like crazy. I had to go and get my ID updated with the military, and it was the middle of the day, and then people are just blowing horns and doing all this stuff, and I'm just like, get me. I'm gonna do what I need to do and get me out of that because it was right near the Capitol, out of here as soon as possible. And it's like I don't want to deal with that at all. Let alone I have to go to the VA as well a couple times a week.
Yeah, and like here's the thing, to just kind of tie this piece, I think into another story, unless there's anything else that you want to discuss specifically about this. But like when you think about what has been happening in Minneapolis, going back to the George Floyd riots, like let's be very clear, that's where this started. Before George Floyd riots, there was actually an agreement that the chief at the time, Arredondo, had made of increasing the total Minneapolis police force to like 1,200. That was something that he had agreed, and that Jacob Fry at the time had said, yes, we're going to try and make this happen. George Floyd happens. Minneapolis police dropped from like 800 officers down all the way to like, at some point, I think they were like under 500. They were maybe in the 400s of, again, total law enforcement. So they go from almost having 1,200 cops down to like, again, under 500, 400. Now they're back up to like around 600. And then all of this nonsense is happening and they're going to drop again. And so it's just like these like, I mean, I got a couple of guys that I've befriended throughout the last few years. And I don't want to say what their names are, but like they chat with me and they text me and they tell me like, man, it is brutal. But these are people that grew up in Minneapolis and they are still loyal to their community. They're like, regardless of what's happening, I can be a difference maker. I can do something still in my community. And it's just sad that that's the state of how things are. It's like they're put in this very, very terrible spot and they don't want to feel like they're abandoning their community because this is where they grew up. This is where they've made their career. And even though you have such poor leadership, I had hopes for Chief O'Hara, and he's just shown that he's awful, man. He's not good. He's not a good leader. But that's just what it is. So, Drew, Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this?
No, that's good. Just we talked about two different types of journalists right here, the Don Lemon and Nick Sorter here. So it's like, do what makes sense and what's constitutional, and there's a moral thing too. And you see two different things right here. But yeah, AK, do you want to roll into Jake Lang?
Yeah. So if you guys, and this actually ties into one piece about this potential deployment. So if you guys paid attention at all on Saturday, and if you want to pull up that first story, feel free to, the KSTP article. But on Saturday, renowned right winger Jake Lang, or far right winger Jake Lang, announced that he was going to be in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. He said that he was going to basically have a demonstration, and in that demonstration, he also claimed that he was going to light a Quran on fire because he is a proud Christian nationalist, and he was going to also wrap it in bacon. So basically, no one that practices Islam could grab the Quran and put the fire out. So obviously a pretty sensational thing to announce ahead of time, saying that he was coming out to support ICE and, stop the Somali invaders. Now that's personally language that I don't drive with. Like, that's not my thing. However, I think it's silly to call someone far right. If you were to ask me where a lot of my political positions lie, I'm pretty far right, but I don't believe that those tactics are very helpful. But regardless, you still in this country have freedom of speech. And in fact, we've had multiple Supreme Court cases that say that you can indeed burn a Bible, a Christian Bible. You can indeed set an American flag on fire, and that those are protected speech. But all of a sudden, when you have a guy that comes in and he wants to do it to a Quran, law enforcement disappears. And the reason I wanted to say this ties in, I actually believe that the only reason that Tim Walz put the National Guard on standby is because of Jake Lang coming, and they thought that this would spark crazy riots in the street. That's what they thought. That's what I personally think why Walz, because like they really working their networks hard, trying to tell their leftists, don't show up. you know, don't be provocative. Instead, you know, stick to your Ice Watch garbage nonsense. And even on the right, there were people that were reaching out to me saying like, you need to put out a statement. I'm like, put out a statement about what? Like, if people want to show up to Jake Lang's burning of a Quran, like, go for it, man. Again, protected free speech, not something that I advocate for. I think it's respectful to do that type of stuff. Even though I am a Christian, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And I do believe that if you practice Islam, sorry, man, you're going to hell if you die. It sounds harsh to say, but that's my actual belief. But I still think that it's disrespectful to like spit on someone else's religion. Point is, Jake Lang still reserves that right to be able to do that. And so I wanted to play a video here real quick. So I'm going to take over controls for a hot sec. And I'm going to play this just quick video so you can see how the peaceful, you know, flag burning, freedom of speech crowd likes to act when apparently you do things that they really don't like. This is a video that's pretty. For context, in that car is Jake Lang, who has already been beaten with a wooden stick, profusely bleeding from his head, and he's trying to escape. And these are how these animals act.
You can expand it too.
Wait, let them go! Let them go!
Let me see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, again, Boomer Lennial over here.
Drive the car!
I mean, they're literally holding the door, not letting him leave, and they're kicking in. Like, I mean, listen, any kicks could have killed this dude easily. Like a straight kick to the face could easily kill you. Like, there's just no question. But yeah, I mean, this
Also,
is how.
I'm looking at this video. That driver's a female.
Well, there's a little bit of a backstory.
Potentially.
So there's these two drivers. Are this one right here, the driver actually, the person, the passenger's like their friend riding along, is actually a trans woman. Did not know that Jake Lang was getting in the vehicle, and about a block later, after asking like, oh, were you running from ICE? He's like, no, I was being attacked by protesters. They stopped and said, get out of our car. But again, the only reason I laugh is because like that is, just imagine like you barely escaped with your life, drive a block, and your Uber Lyft driver is a trans woman who is like down with anti-ICE protesters. You're like, oh my goodness. Luckily, again, he wasn't hurt anymore after that. But yeah, man, I mean, I just want to throw it to
They
each
don't
of
realize that
Go ahead.
the guy was protesting the religion that makes it okay to throw them off of a building.
you. Dude, I mean, again, that's
the
why I
world's
laugh.
irony-
That's going to
never
all
end.
of it. It's just got to be equal underneath the law. If there's a law, everyone's got to abide by all of it. Otherwise, we don't have a country. We don't have cities and states. We can't all get along on the same page. And anybody who's acting like, oh, everybody on this side is doing it all right, everybody on that side is doing it all wrong, vice versa, it's just not the case. And I can't wait for this all to be over with, but I have a feeling it's not going to go peacefully into the night. People are just going to be like, nope, we're good. There's going to be an escalation, and I don't like any of it.
Yeah, and what I wanted to throw it out there and ask each of you, it's like we clearly see that the left, they will use violence, they will celebrate violence, but yet there's still this perception that they are like the peaceful hippie people, right? Like it's just not the case. They will gladly use violent acts to enforce their will when they have someone like, let's just set the stage here. Jake Lang, besides burning the Quran, which whatever, right? Again, protected free speech. Could you imagine if a bunch of right-wing guys showed up and when someone started to burn an American flag, they started to beat him mercilessly with a stick and chase him down and kick into his car? Every frontline story would be about crazy right-wing whatever, right? But the truth of the matter is, in this case, he was just saying a thing. He wasn't physically accosting people. He wasn't trying to beat people. He just had naughty thoughts and opinions, and they're willing to beat him and almost murder him. So I'm just curious, from your two perspective, like, how do you handle this? Like, would your advice be to not go out? Would your advice be to, like, next time you roll out, like, roll with a mob, like, bring your own security crew and make sure that this don't happen? Like, how do we deal with this from your guys' perspective? I know my answer, but I'm curious what your guys' answer is.
Yeah, I mean, quick answer is going to avoid it. That's what I'm doing. I'm avoiding all of it. I don't want my family members close to it. But then at the same time, if you're stuck there, if you live in all this stuff, what do? You got to, like you said, roll with other people, well, people you know and everything. Like, and it's not going to happen very well, no matter what the case is, because there are going to be these bad apples. And like you said, you can do it underneath the constitution of this, but actions have consequences. And if people are okay with that, but I don't think these people are aware of the actions the consequences that can come from these actions or being a part of it. Like, no one's going to be innocent in all this stuff. And yeah, you have these rights, but if you choose to act on them, there could be unnecessary consequences that could happen just because you're being present in this.
What about you, David? What are your thoughts? What are your solutions, man?
Ironically, I was actually going to go down and get some footage of him talking, because I had seen the announcement and I was following him on social media. So I actually saw him, like, he made a video of him like in Barnes and Noble buying the book and then going to the grocery store and buying the supplies. So I mean, listen, that's you're asking for a fight, got it. But I think I'm gonna counter Drew a little bit. Normally we tend to agree on almost everything, but I mean, it's different. You're a family man. You have children. You have people. And I'm over here with none of that at the moment. So my view on it is a little different, maybe. But I think that as Christians, we're commanded to stand against evil and live with courage. And I think if we get uninvolved, then we ultimately teach the left that violence will win them the day. And we don't want that to be the lesson they take away from all of this. And the unfortunate reality is then that means that we're still putting ourselves in harm's way by being a voice in the darkness, right? Shining a light on what we believe to be the truth and what's actually the righteous way to go about things. And I think unfortunately, like you guys were saying, we're going to see more of it. I will say today being like below zero, I feel like there was a lot less going on. I think some people, they couldn't feel their toes and they were like, we're going to go home. They're not paying us enough for this. We'll see if some stories come out. But while we're on the topic, I have the actual video.
Yeah.
AM, if you want to pull this up, and I want to get you guys' reaction. This is, you could see it as funny. You could see it as hateful. Everybody's got a different take on it. But so what we were talking about before, he covered the book in bacon specifically so that nobody could touch it. But this guy did after, because I don't even believe he got to set it on fire. I think the way he was attacked, like he dropped said book, and this guy picks it up. He's chanting, he kisses it, and then he realizes that he's got bacon all over him. AM, if you want to play that. I don't know what the sound quality on that's going to be. But yep, and he's like, he can't seem to grasp what's on his face. But I mean, it's worth the chuckle, but also at the same time, like I was saying, like, you're asking for a fight when you do certain things like that. Like if we're protesting a church, I don't recommend we go burn some Bibles. If we're like if Israel attacks us tomorrow, I don't say we should go burn some Torahs in front of synagogues. Like, not that would happen, but just, like, as an example, like, I think there's a better approach. But it's still protected free speech. And ironically, tying it to our previous story, it's such a contrast, right? You have Don Lemon and all these BLM retiree activists that are back in motion interrupting a church service and actively threatening people in their place of worship. And then you have a guy standing on the street lighting a book on fire, that may have some significance to a group of people, but he's not invading their mosques, right? And it's just it's such a contrast.
Yeah, and that goes back to the whole where people are making money off this in some kind of way, whether it's the filming, the clicks, getting paid from other sources. It's going to be if it bleeds, it leads. And now everyone can, have their own phone and recording or reaction to it and stuff like that. So yeah, I just keep going back to, it's not going to end out the way that you think it's going to happen.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? Like when I say, like, you probably shouldn't be disrespectful to other people's religions or whatever, I think that's a personal choice to make. And I will firmly continue to stand by the idea that as much as I hate the idea of people burning the American flag, it's protected speech, man. It is. And I know that President Trump talked about, trying to make it, like a federal, I don't know if it was a crime, but like at least a penalty that you could receive a penalty on it and potentially jail time. And there's a lot of people that push back on it, of course, and said like the Supreme Court has already ruled on this. Unless we amend the Constitution, that's just not going to work. We would have to amend the Constitution because Supreme Court has ruled on it, and their precedents would be like, even if Congress passes a bill to actually ban burning of the American flag, Supreme Court has ruled on it so many times that it's protected speech that it is. My point is that I don't like people burning the American flag. I think that if you do, you are a very disrespectful person. I don't even know why you're in the country. But again, it's protected. So in that same vein, if I can be okay with someone burning the American flag when I love this country, then you got to be okay with burning the Quran. And I think that this is what's so fascinating. The idea that, and this is just something about our faith, right, as Christians, like you're not going to have people in general attacking people burning a Bible. Like some people might freak out, but far less. You try and build a Quran and they're going to try and murder you. So people from that faith will try and murder you. And I think that this leads back to this escalation, this back and forth, where you might get people, like a church that I go to has security. They are armed, and there are a handful of us, if you want to say members of that church that also carry firearms. And if a group tried to come in and disrupt our service, most of the men would stand up and say, absolutely not. Now, does that mean that we would start fighting and tussling in the middle of the church? Maybe. I mean, maybe. Like if I pushed you back and said, you guys got to leave, you're violating, you're trespassing, we don't want you here anymore, and people were like, get your hands off me, we would just probably start pushing them forward. And if someone threw a punch, yeah, man, listen, I'm a Christian, but I ain't gonna let you, steal one on me without stealing one back on you. But this is the thing. This is just this like escalating back and forth. So for me, I just go back to like, you're protected to do it. I don't think you should be beaten or almost killed for doing it, but I would recommend not doing it. That'd just be my personal position, is like, just don't go and burn Qurans, man. It's just, I don't think
WWJD covers flipping tables and hitting people with sticks.
Yeah, it does, in your place of worship, because that's the context, right? So again, you come into my house of worship and you're trying to wild out, I ain't gonna let you just run around and terrorize all the children, because that was the other part too. I am curious though, right? Like kind of in the same vein of everything that's been happening here in the Twin Cities over the course of these last 3 weeks. I'm so curious from both of your perspective, and I'll start with you, Drew. What are people in your personal circles saying, A, about what they think about the ICE raids? Like, do they think it's too much, too little? And B, what do they think just like in general about illegal immigrants? Are they empathetic, sympathetic? I'm just curious. Like, you don't have to tell me any specific conversations.
Yeah, I can't get anybody to say a legitimate response to it. They say, I don't like how ICE is going about it. I'm like, well, how are they going about it? What are they trying to do? And you can't even get that conversation. So it's like, there's no even point to it. The other people that are full on with all the stuff, and it's like, they will post everything. And then just lately, since the Charlie Kirk stuff, like when people are posting basically glorifying violence and hurting people, I can't. I used to never unfriend people because I wanted to see what everybody's opinions were, but I'm like, I can't get on board with this. So I've just been doing a lot more unfriending, be like, I don't even want this a part of it. You're not the person that I thought you were, and stuff like that, of calling for action and like that. So I'm avoiding conversations with people because they're not, it's all emotional. If they're only going to act on emotion and they're not, even trying to understand what's going down, and they're just using the mob basically to say that all of them are bad, Nazi this, Germany this, and that's what it is. But they're the ones who are becoming the authoritarianism, the fascists or whatever. It's like they're not saying what the description of, and it's not going over well. I'm so sick of it.
What about you, David? From your personal circles, man, I'm just genuinely curious, like, what do people think about what's been going on? Like the normie perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I run the gambit range between, I've got people that, I'll post some semi-controversial looking stuff on my social media, just to get some engagement and, maybe get some people back and forthing in the comments. And I'll see that, I have a group of people that, they're on board with common sense. They might not even be like Republican conservatives, but they're just like, hey, we need to get people need to get out of ICE's way, let them finish the operation, and then things would settle back down because they'd be done, right? They'd be out of here. Then I've got, this other group of people, and it ranges from people I went to high school with, people in the town I used to live in, some of my military friends even, that are so far on the left in their emotions that they don't want to hear common sense things. And so when people come in and they try to talk to me about it, I just relay it back to my personal story where I'm like, listen, I came here from the third world, and the third world tried to kill my adoptive parents. They blew up the U.S. Embassy. We were in the hotel across the street. The embassy had to move the American citizens that were down there to a safer location. And that could have been, they could have taken out my parents while they were trying to adopt us. And I don't want those people following me here. I don't want them finishing the job. I just spent the weekend doing some family time with some of my sister's kids, and I don't want them to grow up in a world like that. And if you import the third world, you get the third world. And so I'm all on board with what ICE is doing. Does that mean I have to agree with every single tactic used, or do I have to like every single thing that they're doing? No, but I want the end result, right? And I want people to get out of their way. And if you are going to get in their way, if you're going to attack people's places of worship, if you're going to attack journalists in the streets, you're becoming the thing you claim to hate with like the whole fascism argument. And yeah, I want to see people brought to justice. I've had maybe one or two people that were kind of willing to hear me out, and it was interesting. I had an exchange on social media a couple of days ago with somebody I used to know, and I basically just put that in there, like, listen, like the third world, they almost killed my parents, they killed some of my other family, and they kind of they were like, we're sorry that happened to your family. They just kind of backed off of the conversation. So I think if you can actually get in front of, like, there's some people that, like Drew was saying, they're just following emotions, right? And they're letting the TV tell them how they should feel. And if you can actually stand in front of them and be like, listen, there's another side of this story, and here's what it is. And they're like, oh, maybe these people aren't telling me everything. And I think there's some benefit to that. And I agree with Drew's frustrations. I mean, you're still gonna have people, like, I discovered even at my job, like, I distanced myself from a lot of my coworkers because I discovered that, after the Charlie Kirk assassination, that about half of my coworkers would celebrate my death because I believe in a lot of what he believed in, and they were, openly happy about him, in the situation that happened, to UVU, and it's, yes, I mean, I'm like Drew, like, I have this gambit of, like, where I want to engage with people that are, like, maybe in the middle, and I can maybe show them some logic, some knowledge. And then there's also the people that are so far on the left where I'm like, I don't need you in my life. You're not.
My thing is, it's like there's a time and a place for it all. And if we're doing a work project or something, it's like, maybe let's focus on this rather than try to figure out where each other stand. I'd rather do that, because let's figure it out and talk about it. But at the same time, right now, since we're like in the heat of it, the frog is currently boiling. There's not a spot where we can kind of come together and enough time, because it's like, oh, now we got to go, or now whatever, and then we didn't get a chance to really dive into it. So right now I'm just kind of waiting until the dust falls, and then we can have like a real legitimate. But yeah, I'm getting friends and family coming up to me, and they're like, how do you feel about what ICE is doing? How do you feel about what's going on in Minneapolis? I'm like, you say it first, you talk first, and then I'll let you know how I feel, because it just feels like a trap. No, because yeah, they come at me something like that, trying to like test my stuff, because based on my whatever experience or opinions or whatever, I'm like, no, you tell me your stance for, you define your terms, like a speech. But no, it's getting wild. I have a friend that's on like he does like the dating apps and stuff like that. So he's even matching with people, with women, and then they're like, before we talk anymore, can you tell me your opinion on what's going on with ICE? And he told me
as
that.
the resident
like,
person that has been in the dating world, I have seen that even before all of this blew up, people would just, like, they're putting it in, like, people put it in bios. Like, you see it, like, they're just like, F Trump, if you voted right, swipe left, or whatever. Like, it's all over the place. Like, Yeah, people have lost touch with reality. Like,
Cool.
So-
Let's go into this one, and then I got an update with Don Lemon. So go for
Awesome.
this. Right
So
now.
the reason I
wait.
wanted to kind of get you guys' opinion on what the normie view is. So this story came out just the other day that CBS poll finds that Americans say ICE is being too tough, and Republicans feel that protesters have gone too far. Now listen, for those of you that don't know, I have my political science degree in my bachelor in political science. And so in that, I did take stats and polling. And in general, I'm just like a polling nerd. I like following two independent pollsters, Rich Barris. He does a lot of great polling. And then Mark Mitchell with Rasmussen Reports does a bunch of polling, and had an opportunity actually to talk to both of them at AmFest and been able to actually chat with Mark Mitchell a handful of times outside of that as well. So my point of saying all that is that the polling, there is no one single poll that matters. Things can be outliers, but I think that over a long or large enough sample, you can kind of get a good idea. Now, this poll was done by CBS with YouGov. And so when stopping and detaining people, ICE is being too tough, not tough enough, or about right. And too tough was 56%. Not tough enough was 16, about right 27%. Now that number has risen by 5 points to 61% say too tough, 15% say not tough enough, and 24% say about right. And then for protesters against ICE have gone too far. This is kind of interesting, right? 10% of Democrats say that protesters have gone too far. Only 10%. 48% say not far enough. So basically 58% say, no, we need to ramp up these protests. And 40% said about right. Obviously, independence is interesting because our country really, the way our elections sway, independents have a huge, huge impact on that. 35% say too far. 32% say not far enough. And 33% say about right. So it's so fascinating that in this battle, this PR battle of our protesters doing enough against ICE, should they do more, Democrats and independents do have an edge. Sad to say, but that's the reality of how these things are looking. And so my personal experience of, again, the normies that I've interacted with, people that don't pay attention to the news, they're concerned about their kids' volleyball game, they're concerned about, watching the next playoff game, they're concerned about doing some fishing, see what the ICE reports are like. And so they only get glimpses of what is happening in the real world because they don't pay total attention. And as we know, the legacy media lies about everything. And they're like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think that we need to enforce our border stuff, but like maybe they're going too hard and we're losing that PR battle. So I say all of this to just say that I think it's important that we encourage people that we are at a point in this country that I think is similar to, basically the 60s, that we have to decide as a nation, what are we? Are we a nation of laws, of a constitution that empowers we the people to elect our representatives who then go and pass laws that then we expect the government to enforce? Or are we a nation where the mob rules? And even though we have a law on the books, if the mob feels that, that's just, we can't enforce the law that way, that's really nasty. Do we just say, well, then I guess screw the Constitution, screw our laws. We just have to back down. So we have to choose. It's literally,
and it's
it's
all about the terminology too. Yeah, well, you're right, AK. You got to choose between the two, but because it's not always going to look pretty. But I thought we were under the idea that you make a law and you're going to abide by it 100%. But yeah, what you're saying, I'm not on that anymore because no, I think all these different factions, all these different ideologies and tribal stuff and whatever you want to call it, they're just going to use the power for their own control. And then when it goes against them, then they're like, no, the cops, the agents, they're going too far. But if they're using it for their own advantage, then they're going to use it. So yeah, I'm disillusioned with that. But going back to that, the polling, it says protesters. So I could see how Democrats would say, oh no, they're protesters. They're doing just fine. But if it's protesters that are also committing crimes and doing riots and burning and stabbing people and doing this, then that might have the normie say it's like, no, those ones are going too far. But I could see how the independent Republican would say, yeah, that whole group, their side, whatever, their momentum, their movement. If you say like the anti-ICE movement, that's why I don't even like the whole protesters or even say rioters. It's like, no, call them all a movement. Are they going too far or not far enough or about right? And yeah, it's too far. Go home or, deal with the consequences.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating to me in my analysis, and then we'll move on with your update, Drew.
Yeah.
We have to realize that it doesn't matter what the truth is in 2026. And I don't think it's actually mattered for a while. It's about who can control the PR game and who can win this battle of believing that, okay, this is justified versus this is not. So for people that watch this video, my hope is that you will not back down from being bold about what is happening and making sure to find, again, like actual, truthful, factual information that pushes back against a lot of these narratives that are being pushed by the media, because this is what they want. They want so much public pressure to force the Trump administration to stop the deportations, and we can't. We have to continue, because this is our shot of getting rid of so many illegal aliens that have messed up our entire voting system, that have messed up our economy. Like, it's time to actually enforce it, or I guess amend the Constitution to say that we don't have any borders in any immigration process. But that's my final thoughts.
So yeah, we got Don Lemon here. I'm messing up the name on purpose, but
I was gonna say, every time you say it, my soul's renewed a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Trump shares call for Don Lemon's imprisonment over Minnesota church protest coverage. So we got here, President Trump amplified calls for journalist Don Lemon to face punishment over his coverage of Minnesota church protest, reposting a message from Truth Social suggesting prosecution under here's what AK was talking about, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, FACE Act, as the Justice Department said it would pursue charges related to the incident. And so here's some of the information related to kind of how that works. He posts that message. Comes as an increase for Lemon's face prosecution under the FACE Act, which prohibits interference with those seeking reproductive care or religious services. And I think it just goes more about the background. So, AK, I don't know if you covered this part, but to confirm that Lemon's would face charges, but cited possible enforcement of the Enforcement Act of 1871, known as the Ku Klux Klan Act, which was passed during Reconstruction to prohibit states from discriminating against voters based on race, appearing to suggest that it could be used on the grounds that interfered with partitioners' right to worship. I don't know if you came across that. I heard that earlier in the day that it could be related to that act as well.
Yeah, no, you know what? That was in the original story. It's just, I got I think I was like rabbit or squirrel, and then I went off a sidetrack. But I think it's the irony and the hilarity that on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, that Don potentially could be charged with violating the KKK Act by the Trump administration is, I don't know, man. It's just like sometimes God has a plan. And
live by the sword, die by the
way.
sword. And we've been talking about this all night. If there is a law, it has to be upholded by everybody, no matter what the situation is. Define that and then send it to the legal. And then, like I said earlier, if I thought that there was going to be charges, I want there to be charges, and to the full extent. It's like we all have to live by the same kind of rules. What do you think, David?
And let's not forget, the Democratic Party is the party of the KKK. That was their militant arm. That was their branch, right, when they were first founded. And so it's ironic, given the day, and what he's going to be charged with. But it's just that history repeats itself. There's nothing new under the sun. These people, they don't have the ability to create anything new. They're going back to old tactics that worked, 100 years ago. to threaten. Except now it's, the group that they're going after is Christians and conservatives versus, the enslaved communities that we had here in this country. And yeah, it's ironic. It gives you a good chuckle, but it's also, yeah, it's just a reminder that, as the history guy, like I love reading about history. Like, it's just that reminder that this was the party of the KKK. So of course they're going to be using their tactics, and they're going to get punished under the law because we outlawed those tactics.
Yeah, and let me just add one other piece. So some people they take great umbrage when you kind of shatter their perception of things. And it's just because, I'll be honest, the left was so good at rewriting history to basically erase all of the bad parts, and specifically the Democrats. Like, people need to understand, the Republican Party was literally founded as a joining of two parties, the Whig Party and the Free Soil Party. So the Republican Party was started as an abolitionist movement that they wanted to end slavery. And that's why Abraham Lincoln was the first elected Republican. So if Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans wanted to end slavery, then other party was in existence, the Democrats, that wanted to keep it going, the Democrats. So it's so funny.
I could dive into this. I love this part of history.
And so specifically, what people take umbrage with is when I talk about the KKK, some people say the Democrats started the KKK. That's not actually true. What is true is that Democrat members, Nathaniel Bedingford, started the KKK with a couple of other gentlemen, and they were actively registered as Democrats. But you are right, David, that they use them because they're like, oh, we didn't start it. Those guys are former Democrats. But it's like they remain Democrats up to the point that you had at Madison Square Garden back in like 1922, like literally the KKK had like an activist Democrat wing. And at that time there were Northeast Democrats that had started to form, and they almost got for president. And I think it was the 22 or 24 election. They actually almost endorsed at the DNC convention a like grand wizard of the KKK. Like, I think his name was McAdoo or something like that. But like, that's who they were actually trying to put up at Madison Square Garden. So
that sounds like a name of a wizard.
This wasn't just like back in like the 1860s, man. It was into the 1920s very easily. And then you can go all the way into the 1950s and 60s. What states and who was in power of all of these states that did not want to allow for integration after the Civil Rights Act? It was Southern Democrat states, literally Democrat states, Democrat governors that wouldn't allow for integration. And so like the line continues. Sure, they might have shifted from being, from this to that, but the tactics still exist. And one last little piece of historical knowledge of every time, like I think there's been 30 times that the Insurrection Act has been invoked. In the majority, it was invoked by a Republican, and in some cases, some Democrats, against Democrat-ran cities and activists that aligned with Democrats in almost like 70% of the cases. Like legitimately, and the other like 25%, it was like ambiguous of like who specifically the group was. But it's always been invoked against, it's basically been Republicans invoking it against radical Democrats going all the way back to when the Insurrection Act was founded. Like, it's crazy when you think about it. Cause like,
What do you think, David?
yeah, what do you think, man?
Oh man, well, I just love the history tangent that AK went on, and it just made me think about all the stuff I learned. Because there's so much they don't teach you in school, and we're talking about the foundations of like the Democratic Party and their ties to the KKK. And what people don't realize is the Republican Party has its origins and its ties going all the way back to the founding fathers, right? Lincoln, when he was a junior senator, when he was at the very start of his political career at that level, he was being mentored by John Quincy Adams, who they called the hellhound of abolition, because the original founding fathers, his father John Adams, right, part of the plan was freeing of the slaves, but they had to choose between that or getting what would eventually become the Democrat-run states to get on board with fighting against England to become our own country. But that was always in the original plan. But they were like, let's win this fight first, and then we're going to do this other thing. And And I just love those dives into history because it's like you look at the foundations of the Democratic Party, the violence, the hate, the wanting to keep slavery as an active part of our economy versus the Republican Party having its with Lincoln and everything having its origins going all the way back to members of the families that were the founding fathers of this country. Little history
Excellent.
for our
Well,
viewers.
Yeah, little history. That's good. We can add that stuff in on future shows. That's pretty cool. And then clip that out because that's awesome. Yeah, let's go into some. I'd say more fun topics, but it could be a little more detrimental as far as that because we got a solar storm doomsday. So, AK, do you want to brush us up on that?
Yeah, so if AM, if you want to pull up that story, listen, I mean, there are times when the country is wilding out and you're trying to really wrap your head around all the complexities and you come across people just saying the dumbest possible things and you're like, maybe send the asteroid god, please. Just end this struggle for all of humanity. Well, the sun is going to release the largest solar radiation storm in over 20 years, according to forecasters. Now, I think this is always fascinating. Like, I love a lot of the science stuff, but basically, a powerful solar storm is coming for Earth. It's likely to create dazzling auroral displays, which, if you guys remember, the auroras, like a few months ago, were stretching all the way down to Florida. And that's happening actually later tonight and early tomorrow morning. It could disrupt satellite-based communications and GPS accuracy. The solar radiation storm, ranked at a level 4 or 5 in the severity scale, is being tracked by the National Weather Service's Space Weather Prediction Center. So here's the thing that's wild, okay? If you guys don't follow Space Weather News, he's a great follow. He's been basically talking about this theory that we actually have the potential to have a complete polar shift where our North Pole and our South Pole literally flip, or they flip 90 degrees. And all of a sudden the North Pole is smack dab in Missouri and the South Pole is smack dab in China or something, right? And so he's been tracking the potentiality of this to happen. But in him tracking that, again, Space Weather News, he's been tracking the solar activity bursts that have been coming from the sun because it's pretty wild. The last big solar flare that hit that created those amazing auroras, when he was tracking it, there was a moment where he was like freaking out online and he was like, if this intensity keeps up for another 5 minutes, we are literally going to roll back to the Stone Age. It's going to fry all of our electrical grids all across the entire world. And he was afraid that was going to happen. But then the solar activity died down. And yeah, go and follow him on X right now and see what he's saying about this, because the truth, our electrical grid is really, really old all across the West. And if this thing, like, basically it creates a geomagnetic storm that, basically is like a giant EMP hitting the Earth. And if our geomagnetic invisible force field doesn't hold because it starts to fail or fall apart because it's being bombarded too much, and it's natural, it's not man-made, then yeah, man, I mean, it fries all electronics, fries all the satellites, and we basically won't be able to use the internet or use our phones to connect with each other at all. It's going to be like literally all going back. So that potential could happen. Drew, I'm curious, man, do you ever think about this stuff in the middle of the night? Do you wake up and say, man, I wonder if a storm's going to wipe out the Earth?
No, I'm not too much into like the geographical things. That's never been my thing. I'm more of like the technology, so I can kind of see where technology could be going, especially related to, I guess, what is it called, the just movies, films, science fiction, basically. So I'm always curious about that. But yeah, I'm wondering, like, you talk about the grid. I'm like, okay, my eyes perked up because, yep, we had that Texas grid kind of froze over a couple years ago. And I don't think we're ready, like, as a country, as a world, as a people, for what's coming next as far as AI and then how that relates to the different weather patterns. Because, like, so many people get up in arms about, climate change, global warming, and more so related to, like, the Industrial Revolution. That kind of brought up on a lot of stuff. And so now with AI, it's just going to shift things much faster than our minds can relate to. And this relates to, like I brought up earlier, with we all got things to film and things to edit and bias and just kind of put out a different version, and then who's gonna take all that in as fact rather than opinion and stuff like that. So I don't know. This is just adding to another thing that the human mind, the average human mind, is not ready for. And the ones that are not ready for it, the ones that are gonna, or think that they are gonna try to control it. So I'm getting not black pilled, but I'm not really excited for kind of what comes next based on everything that's happening around Minnesota and the country.
Yeah, and one kind of piece to add to this, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, David. So like when I read about this stuff, I think what it does for me is it just makes me more aware that I need to be prepared in case something happens, like our grid being shut down, not just from a rogue solar storm that wipes out the grid and we're without the internet for the next 2 weeks, and that might affect our ability to, like, for me to turn on my heat, right? Like if the power substation goes down because all their electronics get fried, we're in the middle, it's below zero. Do you have a backup generator? Do you have the ability to provide heat for your family? These are things that you should just be thinking about in general, because sometimes things happen. We could be attacked by Russia or by China or by transdimensional beings, and they could shut down the internet and shut down our electrical systems. So just be prepared, man. Be prepared. And that's really what this does for me. Because, like, listen, I'm a born-again Christian. And so if it's our time, bro, if God's calling us home and he's like, listen, man, it's time, I'm ready. But
David, what do you think?
What are your thoughts, man?
Oh man, there's so much to unpack there. Couple of things. Drew was talking about the real life fear of AI. I say, listen, if this thing comes and it wipes out the technology, maybe it inadvertently saves us from AI, and that could be, like AK was talking about, that could be hand of God just reaching out, protecting us. Like, listen, you guys are playing with things that you're not ready for. We're just gonna wipe out all the tech. You guys can try again in like 1,000 years and see if maybe you stop, driving off with people's cameras so they're holding onto the side of your car, and you can chill out a little bit. Conversely, because I had this ridiculous theory during COVID. I was like, if it's not China, if you were going to come down from outer space and conquer a people, the first thing you'd do is introduce a bioagent and wipe out half of the fighting force that would stand against you, right? So this could be that too, like you were talking about with your transdimensional beings, AK. This could be a prelude to a larger invasion. But either way, yes, I agree. Have a plan. Have some backup generators. Have a means to provide food, water. Get one of those. You can get those kits that help you purify water and things like that. Like all that's valuable, and it's something people should have. Not just the people with bunkers in their backyard. Like everybody should have some of that stuff. Like I have a cold weather kit in my car, so like if I have a vehicle issue or I end up in the snow, like I've got the tinfoil blanket to keep me warm. I've got the flare gun, so that if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, people can find me.
Don't worry, you put that tinfoil blanket around your head to protect from the transdimensional beings.
Listen, not with this hair, all right? Not with
No,
this
that's
hair.
good. That's a good story to kind of wrap on. It relates to other things that we've talked all night, because be prepared, take care of the people you on. The more that people have to rely on outside things, the government, the highest level, the federal, then state, county, all that, the less you're able to take care of your own self. I heard something that, like, if we did have an EMP or the grid goes down, all the people the amount of people that rely on like refrigerated medication, like they'd be gone quickly, and that's going to lead to more stuff. Let's leave it right there. We can get into more fun topics in the future. Let's go around and
Real quick, Drew. We do have one question in the chat, and I'd like to honor those because we want to get engagement. So we want you to bring in your questions, chat. Let us know what you're thinking about these topics. But real quick, we got from Matt_97_Miller. Thank you for this question, and he wanted to know, if the Insurrection Act is put into play, do you think it will tone things down, or do you think it will cause more chaos? Also, if it is put into play, and chaos continues, what would be the next step after that? If we can maybe give Miller
one person answer. One
Yeah,
person.
absolutely.
Go ahead, AK.
So I would say it definitely will be helpful because I think it will show that we mean serious business. Are there some people that will go even more ham? Probably. But I just think we're at the point that Insurrection Act will be more helpful than hurtful.
Yeah, I'll answer the second one. Also, if it is put into play and chaos continues, what would the next step be after that? I mean, if it gets put into play, I think I kind of said this earlier, it'll bring down Minnesota, but it's also going to highlight other, Portland, Washington State, Washington D.C., California, like more things will pop up. So then it'll increase things. And the only way that's going to bring down is more law enforcement, which I don't think is the best idea because there's going to be more collateral damage. But yeah, great question, Matt. 97 Miller. That's awesome. But yeah, 5 minutes left and we're going to do a hard stop at the top of the hour. So David, where can people find you? What are you working on until the next week?
Absolutely. I am at the Peruvian Gentleman. I went ahead and fixed all of my socials. I got inspired by AK. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, any of those. I am still on X as 50 Webster. I'm working on fixing that. But X is, they want you to pay for that or something. So I'm trying to find a way around that. What am I working on? I'll be out doing some door-to-door stuff for some local politics. You can see me in February. We have the caucus coming up for the Republican Party. I'll be at that. I'd love to, if you guys are attending that, we'd love to say hello to you. I think AK is probably going to be there as well. But yeah, that's the main things I got going on. Got a couple of concerts I'll be going to, trying to participate in culture and civilization while we still have it before the solar flare takes us out.
My name's AK Kamara, a Republican National Committee man. You can find me on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Real AK Kamara. You can also find me over on TikTok at AK Kamara. I finally broke over 150,000 followers. I'm at like 151,000 or 150,000, 100, whatever it might be. But I finally broke over 150,000. What do I got going on? Well, on Wednesday, I fly out to Santa Barbara for the RNC winter meeting. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm meeting together with the other members of the RNC, which there's 168 of us. And we are going to be discussing how we actually keep the Republicans in power all across the country in 2026. And also, how do we flip Minnesota to being Republican held in 2026? To your point, I encourage everyone on your calendar, February 3rd, if you are a Republican and you believe in the Republican values and you can say, I want to vote for the Republicans, on caucus, which again, February 3rd, show up to your precinct event. You're going to have to go online, just type in caucus, Minnesota, and you'll put in your address and it'll tell you where you caucus. It's a great night, probably takes about 3 hours. You get to meet your local Republicans in your area and they'll kind of teach you how everything goes. So make sure that you go and do that. And that's what I got going on.
Excellent. Drew Outstanding. You can find me on X at Drew Outstanding. I'm trying to be a little bit more on X. There's so many bots, but I'm going to fight against the robots on there. Because, yeah, X took away a bunch of my followers. I'm guessing it was a lot of bots. I saw other people were losing people as well. So on X at Drew Outstanding, where I talk about my own personal stories with medical stuff and a lot of pop culture too. So I'm getting more into pop culture again. And then on YouTube, this is my fun one, Operation Outstanding in Field, Adaptive Sports. Last Wednesday, I had my first monoski training. So I'm training to compete with monoski, sit-down ski. I've been doing the bi-ski for the last couple of years, and now I'm ready to up the game and lose a ski and hopefully still go crush it. So the next couple months, I've been doing that. So it's going to be amazing and putting up a couple of videos. So thank you so much for listening to us. We're talking a lot of Minnesota stuff lately. There are other things when it comes to Greenland and Iran and all that kind of stuff. We'll probably get to that as that heats up. But right now we're focused on Minnesota and solar flares. So YouTube, Culture Warriors Unchained, and on other places as well. And we're expanding our reach. Thank you to our producer in the back, AM. You're awesome. And then, yeah, just keep participating and give us something to talk about. Let us know other topics other than political. We'll talk culture stuff too, and we're looking for more guests as well. So thank you. I'm going to give a salute, and then self-defense. So good night.